This video was supposed to be a complaint. I was going to pretend to hate all the work that goes into building and maintaining a little wooden boat like this, set up a contrast to the reward that comes from taking it on an overnight trip, spectacular views on the screen to emphasize the contrast. But the truth is, I enjoy the work too. Building a little wooden boat means you're always thinking about some puzzle, something to fix or improve. Then you test your solution on a vehicle that's a collage of previous solutions. If it works, the reward crowns previous achievements. If it fails, then you still have a problem to solve. Although lately it seems like I make a mistake a dozen times before I change my approach. Hopefully you're learning things as you go, acquiring skills in wood, adhesives, coatings, metal, fabric, fluid dynamics, and just a perseverance in problem solving. Working on the boats is almost enjoyable as using them. Almost. Even a simple task like putting varnish on this mizzen mast means a chance to improve a rigging issue with the sheet that I'd overlooked. Next, I'm coating the inside of the mizzen mast step with epoxy to seal up the wood from water and rot. The bottom needs to be level so epoxy doesn't pool up and harden in a corner. Epoxy is a miserable material. I wouldn't work with it if something else did it better, but rewarding work isn't always pleasant. The final project for today is the skid plate up front. Solve the problem of constant wear on the bow. I enjoy working with metal too, even as I pretend I can weld in one of these clips. I like a skid plate on a sharp entry like this because you can pick up the stern and rest the bow on the ground as a pivot point. Also, you keep a plumb bow all the way down to the sole, and it maximizes waterline and entry angle, but to be honest, a lot of the appeal is that a straight stem is easier to build. I'll also pretend that I did this work to prepare for the trip because it makes a better narrative. And now it's time to get to water. This transition shows one of the great joys of small boats. Trade the modern world of shouting neighbors and flashing screens for a wide open natural landscape. The naked hillsides on this drive to Nelson's Landing are typical of the Mohave Desert. Guy's taking a picture of Dick Rock. This launch at Eagle Wash is the last place I saw people. Early spring weather was still too cold for the party crowd that will come here to pollute nature's beauty with modified exhausts and bumping sound systems. These types seem to be everywhere since that big health scare we had a couple years ago, but maybe it's just because I sail out of Sin City. Now my brief dinghy cruising adventure begins. The National Park Service labels this part of Lake Mohave the Black Canyon Water Trail, although the black volcanic mountains that give it its name are further north near Hoover Dam. My goal is to sail north to a dark stone promontory that for millions of years turned the path of the Colorado River, which you could consider the natural boundary between Lake Mohave downstream and the narrow Black Canyon to the north. The landmark has stood out in my mind since I sailed this route north to south last spring on a kind of a wild ride halfway to Mexico. I'd like to see the rock again. Sailing this afternoon meant beating into winds, a little shy of ideal. Eventually the winds dropped to a whisper and I rowed. With no other boats on the water, I could have safely pushed on through fading light, but I hate finding a campsite in the dark. I hate those anxious nights camping with no idea of what's just out of sight. You wake up maybe yards from somewhere twice as comfortable or within sight of some working man's morning path. I'd much rather settle into bed with views of the empty landscape that I'm nestled up in imprinted on my mind. This cove is right across the water from the end of El Dorado Jeep Trail. Even though it was spring break, nobody had driven down that moderate trail to keep me company. No cell service, no humans for miles. I was alone. Just a carpet of stars laid out like the handkerchief of the Lord. Me snuggled up in a couple canvas tarps and some foam panel underneath to keep me warm. I slept well. In the morning, daylight crept in slowly and I sat up with my back in the rear tank and ate breakfast. I like this skiff's simple cockpit. It imitates the empty midships cockpits of Jim McCallick's boats. Sleeping with my feet stuffed under the main thwart doesn't make me feel cramped like I thought it might. And the thwart, of course, is a seat to row from. I ate the rest of my food. I'm hungrier than I had anticipated. Make my bed and get a view of where the birds eat their breakfast and time to get moving. The wind in the forecast hadn't arrived yet, so I rowed out into the lake. I'm lazy this morning. I don't want to row a couple miles there and back to Mohave Cove at the Big Black Rock. But it's too early to turn back. I got all day. No rush. I make slow progress towards my destination. As soon as I take a break from rowing to sip on some last provisions, a light wind interrupts me and the sails go up. I gotta take what I can get. The wind this morning comes and goes. Sometimes it's there, it's so light you can't tell which way it comes from, but as long as the boat's moving in the right direction, I'm happy. The rest of the time, I'm on the oars thinking about food. A piece of dock, probably from Willow Beach, had broken off and drifted south, so I used it as a chance to set up a camera and show off my ship. This is the end of the line. A marker I don't remember denotes 42 miles to the Davis Dam to the south. That's a lot of Lake Mohave for me to explore another day. I soak up the view and sit for another coffee thinking of food. The sense of accomplishment gives me the energy to row and sail back towards my truck at Eagle Wash, making sure to stop for glamour shots again, of course, at that wandering dock section. The sense of accomplishment is a reward for building small boats, but it's short-lived, for me at least. You have to enjoy the process. Often it seems like Sisyphus rolling the rock up the hill, and it seems like you're not getting much done, but then eventually you get magic experiences like these, even if it means exploring your limited skills and giving yourself something to complain about. A series on the build of this boat with plans included for free are on my channel. Building and using small boats is a ton of work, but the reward is proportional.